Hey, what's up you guys? It's your girl Tara back with another video. We're diving headfirst into the world of selfies, self-obsession, and straight-up shady behavior. We're going to explore how selfishness, narcissism, and even, yeah, I said it, have become the new normal. We're going to break it all down, step by step, to see how we got here. Buckle up, Buttercup, because this ride is about to get bumpy. Before we point fingers and start naming names, let's get real about what we're actually talking about. What's selfishness anyway? Well, it's basically putting your needs and desires above everyone else's all the time. Narcissism? Think of it like selfishness on steroids. It's an inflated sense of self-importance, a constant need for admiration, and a complete lack of empathy for others. Narcissists are basically in love with themselves, and they want you to be too. Now, Satanism. We're talking about the kind of Satanism that's crept into our culture more subtly. The glorification of power, the pursuit of pleasure at all costs, the belief that you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, with zero consequences. These days, this kind of behavior isn't just accepted, it's celebrated. We're bombarded with messages that tell us to hustle harder, put ourselves first, and be our own boss, even if it means stepping on a few necks along the way. We're going to trace the roots of this me-first mentality, from its historical origins to its modern-day manifestations. Stay tuned. Okay, so to understand how we got to this point, we gotta rewind a little bit. Think back to history class, guys. Remember the Renaissance? Yeah, that whole rebirth thing? Well, it wasn't just about art and science. It was also about a new way of thinking about the world and ourselves. Before the Renaissance, it was all about the collective. People were defined by their families, their communities, their religious beliefs. But then came along these radical thinkers, these philosophers and artists who were all about individual potential. This focus on the individual, on personal freedom and self-expression, it kind of snowballed over the centuries. From counterculture to mainstream, the rise of me-first philosophies and their impact on society. Fast forward to the 1960s, baby, peace signs, flower power, and a whole lot of questioning authority. The counterculture movement was all about challenging the status quo, fighting for social justice, and embracing individuality. The emphasis on self-exploration and personal liberation sometimes morphed into a kind of self-indulgence. And guess what? The powers that be, the corporations and advertisers, they were watching. They saw this growing desire for individual expression, this hunger for personal fulfillment, and they were like, hold my beer. They realized that this me-first mentality could be incredibly profitable. So they started selling us products and lifestyles that promised to make us feel special, unique, and most importantly, happy. The birth of the me generation, how the 80s solidified the shift towards self-obsession. And then came the 80s, y'all. Big hair, shoulder pads, and a whole lot of greed is good vibes. The 1980s were like the ultimate expression of this new, hyper-individualistic culture. It was the decade of the yuppie, the young urban professional obsessed with climbing the corporate ladder and accumulating wealth. Materialism was king, and everyone was encouraged to go for it, even if it meant stepping on others to get ahead. Competition was fierce, and success was measured in dollars and cents. The seeds of selfishness had been sown, and they were about to bloom into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. The rise of reality, from sitcoms to self-promotion. How reality TV normalized self-centered behavior and turned everyday people into fame-hungry stars. Remember when TV shows used to be, you know? Yeah, those were the good old days. Then came the dawn of reality TV, and suddenly, regular people were thrust into the spotlight competing for, well, everything. Money, fame, love, you name it. And more often than not, They were willing to throw anyone and everyone under the bus to get it. These shows, they weren't just reflecting reality, they were it. They normalized backstabbing, manipulation, and drama as the norm. And the craziest part? People ate it up. We were glued to our screens, watching these train wrecks unfold, living vicariously through these larger-than-life personalities. Section 2. The Age of the Influencer. Living your best and most branded life. Exploring the rise of social media influencers and how they monetized narcissism, turning self-obsession into a lucrative career path. And then, boom! Social media explodes onto the scene, and it's like someone handed a megaphone to every narcissist on the planet. Suddenly, everyone with a smartphone and a filter could be a star. It was the Wild West of self-promotion, and honey, it was a gold rush. We're talking about the rise of the influencer, the perfectly curated online persona, selling us everything from teeth-whitening kits to detox teas, all while documenting their hash-blessed lives for the gram. These influencers, they built empires on the foundation of self-obsession, and we, the followers, were their devoted disciples. We double-tapped, we commented, we bought the products, we bought into the lifestyle. Section 3. News and its discontents. When objectivity went out of style, analyzing how the lines between news and entertainment blurred, turning news anchors into personalities and prioritizing sensationalism over substance. Now, you might think that the news at least would be immune to this whole self-obsession epidemic. But guess what? You thought wrong. Even the news, the supposed bastion of objectivity and truth, got caught up in the cult of personality. News anchors became brands with carefully crafted images, social media followings, and even merch? It was less about reporting the news and more about attracting eyeballs, ratings, and ad revenue. And as for the news itself, well, let's just say that sensationalism became the name of the game. Section 1. Mirrors and Filters. The Curated Self. How social media platforms like Instagram and TikTok became breeding grounds for narcissism, fueling our obsession with appearances and validation, and shaping our self-worth in the process. Social media platforms, they're like these digital funhouses full of distorted mirrors and flattering filters, creating illusions that we often mistake for reality. They allow us to present these perfectly curated versions of ourselves to the world. These airbrushed highlight reel versions that bear little resemblance to our actual messy, complicated lives, hiding our true selves behind layers of digital makeup. We post our best angles, our vacation pics, our perfectly plated meals, all in the hopes of racking up those likes, those hearts, those little dopamine hits of validation, constantly seeking approval from our online audience. We become addicted to the attention, to the feeling of being seen, even if it's just through the lens of a carefully constructed online persona, a digital mask we wear. And the thing is, it's easy to get caught up in the game, to start comparing our lives to the perfectly curated feeds of others, to feel like we're not good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough, losing sight of our own unique worth in the process. Section 2. The Comparison Game, Keeping Up with the Digital Joneses. Exploring how social media fosters a culture of comparison and competition, leading to feelings of inadequacy and anxiety. Remember the Joneses, that family down the street with the perfect house, the perfect car, the perfect life that always seemed just out of reach? Well, thanks to social media, we're now surrounded by millions of digital Joneses, each one vying for our attention, our envy, our self-doubt. We scroll through our feeds, bombarded by images of people living their best lives, traveling to exotic locations, wearing designer clothes, achieving their wildest dreams. And even though it's all just a carefully curated illusion, we can't help but compare ourselves to measure our own lives against these impossible standards. This constant comparison, it's exhausting, it's demoralizing, and it's straight up bad for our mental health. Section 3. Echo chambers and outrage. When algorithms fuel division, examining how social media algorithms create echo chambers, reinforcing our existing biases and making it harder to engage in meaningful dialogue. These algorithms are designed to show us content that aligns with our interests, keeping us hooked. Social media, it's like this giant echo chamber, where we're constantly fed information that confirms our existing biases, our preconceived notions, our comfortable little bubbles of agreement. We rarely see content that challenges our views. The algorithms, they're designed to keep us engaged, right? They analyze our behavior and preferences to serve us more of what we like. And what keeps us more engaged than seeing things that validate our worldview, that reinforce our beliefs, that make us feel like we're part of a tribe, a community of like-minded individuals? It's a cycle that keeps us coming back for more. But here's the problem with echo chambers. They prevent us from being exposed to different perspectives, from challenging our own assumptions, from engaging in meaningful dialogue with people who might not see the world exactly the way we do. This lack of exposure stifles growth. This kind of thinking, it breeds division, it fosters intolerance, and it makes it nearly impossible to have productive conversations about the complex issues facing our world. We end up more divided than ever, unable to bridge the gaps. Section 1. Lights, Camera, Narcissism from Silver Screen to Streaming Cues. How movies began to portray self-centered characters not as villains, but as aspirational figures, blurring the lines between ambition and ruthlessness. Think about some of the biggest movies of the past few decades. How many times have we seen characters who are ruthless, ambitious, and totally self-centered, but also charismatic, successful, and kind of aspirational? Yeah, it's messed up, right? We're talking about Wall Street sharks, tech moguls, fashion icons who would sell their grandma for a front row seat at Fashion Week. Suddenly, being selfish wasn't just acceptable, it was glamorous, it was exciting, it was the key to achieving your wildest dreams. Section 2. Music to my self-obsessed ears. Anthems of individualism. Exploring how musical genres, from hip-hop to pop, began to glorify materialism, status, and the pursuit of pleasure above all else. And don't even get me started on the music industry. The message shifted from love, peace, and understanding to money, cars, and champagne showers. Think about some of the biggest anthems of the past few decades across all genres. How many of them glorify material possessions, status symbols, and the pursuit of pleasure above all else? We're bombarded with lyrics about getting rich, getting famous, getting whatever you want, whenever you want it. It gets stuck in your head and starts to influence the way you see the world. The anti-hero effect, rooting for the bad guy. Analyzing the rise of the anti-hero in popular culture and how it normalized selfish behavior by making it seem cool, edgy, and even sympathetic. Remember those movie characters who are kind of terrible people, but also kind of awesome? Yeah, that's the anti-hero effect in action. Hollywood figured out that audiences were tired of the same old squeaky clean heroes. We wanted something different, something edgier, more human, even if flawed. We saw it with characters like Tony Soprano, Walter White, even Don Draper. We found ourselves rooting for them, even when we knew they were in the wrong. And that's the danger of the anti-hero effect. The ripple effect from broken hearts to a fractured society. Examining the far-reaching consequences of normalized narcissism on relationships, mental health, and our sense of community. Okay, so we've journeyed through the history of selfishness. We've seen how the media's been fanning the flames, and we've gotten real about social media's role in all of this. But here's the thing. This isn't just some abstract cultural phenomenon, you know? It's got real-life consequences. Think about it. When everyone's obsessed with themselves, with their own image, their own success, what happens to our relationships, our communities, our ability to connect on a deeper level, our very sense of shared humanity? Yeah, it gets kind of bleak, kind of fast. We're talking about a rise in loneliness and anxiety and depression and feelings of being utterly alone. We're talking about broken relationships, shattered trust, and a growing sense of isolation. It's like everyone's building walls instead of bridges, protecting their own little empires instead of reaching out and connecting with the people around them. And on a larger scale, we're talking about a society that's becoming increasingly divided, increasingly polarized, increasingly unable to empathize with those who are different from us. It's a recipe for conflict, for misunderstanding, for a whole lot of unnecessary pain and suffering. Beyond the hashtag, finding authenticity in a filtered world, offering practical tips for navigating the digital age with intention and genuine connection. Okay, I know what you're thinking, Tara, this is heavy stuff, but hold up, don't hit that unsubscribe button just yet. Because here's the good news, we're not powerless in all of this. We have a choice every single day to choose a different path. How do we stay true to ourselves and find meaning beyond the likes and follows? Well, it starts with awareness. Maybe it's as simple as putting down our phones more often and engaging with the world around us. In this final segment, let's delve deeper into the positive changes we can make to cultivate empathy and authenticity in our lives. By focusing on community, understanding, and genuine connections, we can counteract the negative impacts of individualism. Simple acts of kindness, active listening, and supporting one another can create a ripple effect of positivity. Remember, every small step towards empathy can lead to a more compassionate and connected world. Cultivating empathy in the age of the individual. Choose empathy over apathy and contribute to a more compassionate world. Real change happens from the ground up. One person, one interaction, one act of kindness at a time. We have the power to rewrite the narrative. It starts with choosing empathy over apathy. Let's be the generation that turns the tide. Let's build bridges instead of walls and spread love instead of hate.